My mom told me not to talk to strangers on the internet, but I'm glad I didn't listen. We are the Certified Nunas, your sisters in the love of Asian entertainment. I'm Natalia.
And I'm Sky.
It's just us today, baby. So, for anyone who may have just... Matinee line, woo! For anyone who's like, this might be your first episode, there's usually 4 of us. We have 2 other members, Jessie and Amanda, but Jessie had a work emergency and Amanda had a family emergency, so it's just us, baby. And since it was like just us, that meant that we got to like change, like we had another episode planned. Like there was another episode that really hinged on the 4 of us being here that we were going to do today. But since it's just us 2, that means that we got to pick something that we were going to watch anyway and talk about it. And that is the new Netflix film Officer Black Belt, a Korean action crime film starring Kim Woo Bin, the eyebrows himself, back in action. Listen, even if I don't like the show that he's in, I like him in the show. You know what I mean? But luckily, I think I can say with confidence, because we were chatting before we started recording, both of us actually really like this movie. Oh, yeah. And we want to tell you about it. Yeah, so that's what we're doing today. We're just going to talk about this movie for a little while and like things we liked about it.
Spoilers will abound. It's a movie.
Yeah. So if you haven't watched it yet and you plan on watching it, as we say all the time, press pause here, go watch the movie, and then return here so that, you know, nothing gets spoiled.
I'll give you some content warnings for you to indicate, like, maybe if it's for you or not for you. Mm-hmm. Like, we can talk about that. Yeah. So, some content warnings would be sexual assault, child endangerment, a lot.
Very much so. Mm-hmm. Violence, like graphic
lots of violence. Death,
yeah.
But really, I really want to emphasize the child endangerment. Child
could be a big problem aspect. For people. Yeah, it's not explicitly shown. I will say this, but you do know it is happening.
But topically, it's a large aspect of the movie. So, like, if that is not something you can, and violence too. It's not just a couple of fights. Like it's a thing.
Yeah. So keep that in mind if you do decide to go watch it. And if you weren't going to watch it anyway, or you've already watched it and don't care about spoilers, welcome. Rest what we're going to talk about is Officer Black Belt. So if any spoilers happen from this point on, you have been warned. You cannot hold it against us.
The trailer I thought was a little more lighthearted than the movie itself. So I will give you that.
Yes, the trailer did make it seem like it was going to be more of like a buddy cop vibe to it.
It seemed heavy action, buddy cop vibe.
That's buddy cop vibe. And I will say, like, they do have the 2 main characters, played by Kim Woo Bin and Kim Sung Kyun, do have a very nice, like, relationship that forms through the show. So here's the premise of this show. So you have Kim Woo Bin's character, and he is someone who always needs to be having fun no matter what he's doing, or he's not interested in doing it. And the things that he likes doing is martial arts and playing video games with his friends. So kicking people, just having a good old time, doing some fighting, and then like camaraderie, working together with camaraderie with his friends. So his dad runs a chicken shop, and he delivers food for his dad because he's actually like a very affable guy that people around the neighborhood seem to like.
Yeah, we're not saying that he's like a lazeabout. This is just he's himbo.
He's not academically inclined. He's not what I would call like someone who like enjoys, like, you know, he wouldn't be able to work at a bank. You know what I mean? Like, he wouldn't be able to work at a big company. It would drive him insane. Like, that's what we're sort of, like, he would have been perfectly happy delivering chicken for his dad for the rest of his life.
And they never straight up ever say, like, what his age is. Like, what like, his character age should be. But, like,
somewhere between 20 and 30.
20s.
Yeah, somewhere in the 25 to 35 range, you know. Yeah. Just sort of, like, just doing his own thing. So while delivering some chicken, he witnesses a fight break out between this guy who's all decked out in, like, tech gear, like, tactical gear, and this other dude. And the fight is not going well at all. And the guy who's not in tactical gear is basically going to murder this other guy. Not on his watch.
Well, so he was watching. So he was fine watching it, like, ooh, and then all of a sudden a broken bottle started being involved. Yeah. He was like, oh no, it
went too far. Like, at first he was like, listen, if they're just working out some steam, that's one thing. But when you fighting dirty is not acceptable. So he then steps in and just absolutely bodies this guy. Like, no hesitation.
What, 2 to 3 moves, like it was like boom, like, boom,
so
boom.
quick. Just like takes this guy down. So then you find out that the guy who was about to be murdered is actually a probation officer. And so the way that they have this set up is that probation officers work in teams for violent offenders who have to wear ankle monitor bracelets. So in Korea, you don't wear an ankle monitor bracelet for like petty crimes. Like, sometimes in like the States they'll have like house arrest or something. It's not a thing there. If you're wearing an ankle monitor, it means you are out of prison for like a violent crime or like a sexual crime, and like you're under, you have a certain amount of time that you have to, be monitored to make sure you don't, do it again. And so they work in these teams where there's a probation officer and then a martial arts officer who basically is the physical backup should things go awry. And so this guy, his partner, the non-physical one, is like, hey, we really liked your moves. Here's a commendation from the police force. Like, congratulations, good job. But my partner is like injured, so he's out for several weeks. Do you want to like be his temp? Like, and he's like, oh, I don't know if I'm like qualified to like do this. And he's like, well, do you have like a black belt in any martial arts? And he's like, I'm like a 5th degree black belt in like 3 separate in like judo, kendo, and like taekwondo. And this guy's like, yeah, okay, you qualify. So then he starts working as a martial arts officer for like the probation office and loves it. Like, this is the best job he's ever had. He gets to run around town. He gets to like be in fights, and he gets to help people. Like, it's perfect. And actually the central theme that I thought was like, that I really liked coming out of this was the concept that for every job that exists, there is a person who is perfectly made for that job. And that should actually be a good thing. And I've often thought this, like, like when you see people be like deriding people who are like janitors or something, I'm like, maybe they like being like, there's someone out there who loves being a janitor.
Oh yeah.
And it's only because people are real shitty about it that like it's not seen, because being a janitor is a useful, worthwhile job.
Right.
But anyway, not all is good in the world of officering, because a dude is getting released from prison, and this guy getting released from prison, ooh. Oh, no. This guy is bad. He is a serial child rapist who's been in prison for like 13 years or something, ludicrously small, and is being released because he served his sentence, which was not enough for the crime that he done committed. And so they're like, okay, we're like pretty sure that if this guy's released from prison, like we legally have to release him, but like we know he's gonna try to like go back to his pedophilic nonsense. So we have to have a task force to monitor him constantly. And so they're like, hey, I know you're a temp, but do you want to be hired full time using this task force as your like, basically your, probationary period before you become a full-time thing?
Actually, just at that moment in the movie, character had figured out that he wanted, I'm in it to win it type thing.
This is the perfect job for me.
He was pretty much meeting his little supervisor like nose to nose.
Being
and
like, please,
he's like,
please,
hey,
please.
Can I get a full-time job? And the guy's like, oh, I've got a job for you.
You know what? Kismet has come, because there's a guy that you're gonna want to punch if he goes out of line. So this movie was bizarrely timely if you are familiar with news events that are going on currently in Korea, because this guy gets out of prison and then he is approached by an old associate of his who basically is like, hey, I have a guy who buys child assault videos to sell on the dark web. And we will get you kids if you will make these videos for us. Fucked up shit. Absolutely reprehensible stuff. And so he agrees, and thus begins the second act of the film of basically Kim Woo-bin's character stopping him. And it's, it's, some of it is a hard watch. That little child actress was so good. Also,
and that's why tonally, to me it's difficult to describe the movie because it is not that difficult the entire time.
No.
But it has hard parts to it. It really, really does. And it does not shy away from the fact that, like, and they don't go way into it, but definitely they bring up how long these sentences are and how that's not near enough. Yeah. And you even see what the forensics crime guy who he's the one, like, that was truly the forensics crime guy that is, he's in all the interviews, like, that is the dude that started forensics in Korea. Like,
it is actually him. Like, yeah,
it's him. So you can tell they were trying to say some stuff with this movie. And so when I say there's a lot of dark stuff discussed, I'm not saying those things are not shown, luckily. But child endangerment a lot is occurring. Like, endangerment. You're not seeing...
They're not showing it explicitly, but, like, you know that it's happening. And basically, he then recruits his little game friends who all have, as in a classic, like, action cop style thing, all of his non-cop friends have really specialized knowledge that helps them in this, like, it's fun. Like, that part of it is, like, that you're expecting that's, like, a common trope, like,
get the team together to take down the bad person.
To take down the bad guy, the classic setup. Maybe in semi-legal fashion, but it's fine. He's not a real cop yet.
Do we have a little like inspirational speech to the dad in order
to
convince
of course.
The dad that this is what he wants to do to endanger himself in order to get
after he almost died previously. Because he doesn't want other children to be victimized. It's great. It's great. It has everything you want with it. Now, I will say I was very impressed by one aspect of this movie that I haven't been impressed with a movie of this type in a long time. And that was that the fight choreography wasn't just really good fight choreography. It was, but it was also really good, like set usage of fight choreography. Like, the set designs and the props were all very much integrated in a realistic way for these fight sequences that I haven't really seen done quite this well in a long time. Like, if there is a box, someone is picking that box up and throwing it at someone. If there is a tight squeeze, someone is getting jammed into that so they can't move. Like,
I really felt like they never explicitly, like, said this or made this into a type of superpower for his character or anything, but I believe that in particular was linked to his video game playing, even though they never explicitly said it. because that's such a, because they showed him doing first person shooter team
team thing, and it showed him being very good at utilizing, it was very subtle, where they showed him being very good at utilizing like the terrain to his advantage. And there was like an earlier scene where they're tracking down this like date rapist, and then they're like looking at the building where the guy is, because they have, like he won't reply to their calls, and he's not supposed to be around women, and so they're like, he definitely has a woman that he's not supposed to have in that room. And the guy's like, and he's outside, and the guy's like, okay, let's like go in. He goes, no, wait, you go in, because I've noticed that this one window doesn't have a security grate on it, which I think is on purpose so that he can escape from his apartment. And so he just sat there and waited, and lo and behold, the guy escaped from the window. And so I thought it was like a really good way to very quickly, without explicitly like saying like he's really good at, perceiving things.
Yeah,
to be like,
it's not like they ever had a conversation about that.
No, it was just like, he was like, yeah, that security grate's missing. That's where he's going to jump out. And the guy's like, oh yeah, that actually makes sense. Okay. But then I really thought that it was actually smart showing him how good he was at games, because it was sort of reflecting like, this isn't just a skill that he acquired out of thin air. It was like, he's been utilizing these sorts of skills in his like goof off, quote unquote, portion of his life that he's been doing. Like, he's been gaining valuable skills from like delivering chicken. He now knows about different type of apartment styles and like different types of people. And he's like, oh, like this is weird. Like this, this isn't how this normally is set up for these types of apartments. And he's like, how would you know? And it's like, I deliver chicken, man. Like, and it shows like, he's the sort of character that very quickly absorbs skills if he's enjoying what he's doing. Mm-hmm. So I think he's just ADHD, I think, is what this is actually like. And I think it actually very clearly showed that, because there is this segment where he just has to sit at his desk and wait for like reports to come in, and it's just him like just like looking at like the ticking of the clocks and like just like like on the edge of his seat, just sitting there like, please, 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 please. And that is such an ADHD thing. Like, just I need something exciting that gives me immediate feedback to like enjoy what I'm doing. And so I actually really enjoyed his character quite a bit in that sense, because I thought that it actually, the movie, I guess, really did a good service to characterization in a genre that often doesn't have very good characterization or consistent characterization.
I did appreciate also, like, I'll kind of go back to the tone thing, because I mentioned the dark side of the tone, but like, there is comedy, but it's situational. Now there are some people that's still going to be like, they, some people do not like that with their very dark themes. So like, I totally understand if that balance does not go for some people. Totally get that. Yeah. But I did think, like, for this type of, there were times of a little bit of levity within the difficult fights or something. Because to
sort of make it not so heavy.
That it was in. Right. As far as, so who are you fighting against? You're fighting against these horrific people. Yeah. Doing very bad things. But sometimes the actual fight, is it funny that he's using a mannequin leg in order to do that? It is pretty funny that he is.
Yeah, it's almost like ludicrous. And I think that almost like plays into it, because it's like, he's not a serious person. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so like,
it always made sense for his character. It was not out of character.
It was not out of character whatsoever. But also it's sort of showing what I was saying, like, that really speaking to him as a person, as being someone who very quickly assesses situations and utilizes anything around him. And it's like, and it would be a ludicrous for like another person wouldn't consider doing that, like another person wouldn't pick up a mannequin and huck it at someone's face, but he's just like, and it's sort of, I really like that it was just sort of he thinks outside the box in a very specific skill set sort of way.
Well, I appreciated how it was subtle, how it was handled. It typically wasn't let's then have a discussion about how he's unique from every, like, they never had that discussion.
It didn't treat the audience like the audience couldn't figure it out themselves. You know, it treated the audience like an adult audience that can pick up context clues, which I do always appreciate, because I feel like that's becoming something that happens less and less.
Well, especially when you have a character that is a lighter character, like his character is he is the comedy. Him and his friends are the comedy because of just how their characters are. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times when you have a character like that, all the other characters that might be more serious always have to talk about, they're so weird. You know, like, we're going to just always talk about, they're so weird, you know. Yeah. But they do a good job, so it's okay. We never had to have that discussion. No. And I appreciated how we never had to have that discussion.
I also did, because instead of that usual discussion of being like, oh, like, you know, that's just how he is. Instead, you have, like, his foil, the straight man foil of the probation officer, played by Kim Seung-kyung, who's like, no, that is just how he is, but that's actually, he's not weird for it. That's a skill set that's actually incredibly, he's like, I wish I was weird like that. But his background is that he was in a car accident as a kid and he has one leg that's like 3 inches shorter than the other, so he can't, you know. But like, he was just like, no, like, you have a valuable skill set that's a non-academic valuable skill set. And I always love when a show or a movie really sort of shows that it's like, listen, just because the character as Kim Woo-bin plays it is someone that most people in society would sort of dismiss, right? Mm-hmm. As sort of a loser, like, yeah, he's good at martial arts.
Not bringing much value to society.
Yeah, like, exactly. Like, he's not competing at, you know, the Olympics or anything. Like, he's not doing anything particularly noteworthy. But the sort of the overall vibe is, you don't actually have to be doing something that society deems as noteworthy to actually be valuable to yourself and to other people. Because, like, what he provides is a valuable service that's perfectly tailored to the way his mind works and his skill set. And that's really all anyone can ask in this world, you know? Like, so I really enjoyed that aspect quite a bit.
I also really appreciated, like, so early on, I think even when he was still he was still temping, essentially. Mm-hmm. And his partner supervisor guy offered to take him to dinner. And he's like, and he wasn't trying to take this guy for a ride and, like, take advantage. But he was like, I was going to meet my friends, but, like, can my friends come to dinner? Like, can you buy them dinner too? Which ends up being a massive dinner. Poor guy.
Yeah, but because they're, you know, eaters.
Grown teenagers, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But as far as, like, again, these quote unquote loser, but they're not like,
they're not losers.
They're all very sincere. They are not apologetic about who they are, and they immediately embrace this guy. And they're like,
who's nothing
you're now our friend. Like, this is,
we're gonna call you, we're gonna call you Hyung. We're gonna love you. We're gonna embrace you. And, like, you get the impression from this guy that hasn't happened a lot in his life. But also what I liked about, you know, this probation officer is that he doesn't immediately, like, judge these people. He actually, like, chats with them and, like, learns, like, oh, like, these are good people who have actually interesting inner lives and interests and things that they're trying to do. And then it's fascinating. And I really enjoyed, there is, of course, the segment where everything goes wrong. Everything goes wrong. Like, they do save a little girl, but the child rapist escapes, and he's now on the run. And Kim Woo-bin's been stabbed, and he's in the hospital. And the other guy is in, like, the biggest head brace you've ever seen because his neck got broken. Like, it's bad. And Kim Woo-bin is like, okay, like, I guess this is it for me, I suppose. Like, the police are taking care of it. But then the aunt of, like, the girl who he had saved comes up to him and is like, thank you for like saving my, you know, my niece. Like, she's too scared to leave the house, or she would have, but she wrote you this letter. But if she wasn't too scared to leave the house, she wanted to come see you.
I wept.
Yeah, it was. And so he immediately realized, and so he has like sort of something he has already realized, but he now has like articulated to himself, is that what he does isn't just fun, though it is fun for him. He wants to prevent other people from being victimized to the point where they're too scared to leave their houses when they haven't done anything wrong. And that's sort of his thing, where it's like, but she didn't do anything wrong, and there's no reason why she should have to live in fear because of this monster. And so since I know a problem exists, I now have to fix this problem because the legal system won't fix it. He comes to this, you know, him and his friends come to this realization while listening to our old friend, forensic guy, on the TV program talking about how Korea has some of the most lenient, like, sexual crime, you know, punishments in the world. And so nobody really takes it seriously, and that's a problem. And so he's like, yeah, you know what, guys? This is a problem. We need to help fix it. It's a problem that we can fix. And so they get together, and, you know, each of them has their own little skill set, like, you know, like going to his cousin who's like a hacker, and the other one has like, he's a filmmaker, so he has like these drones, so they're like, you know, doing surveillance and stuff. And it's just like, you know, like a fun sort of, the buddy cop has expanded to the group of, you know, affable losers do good as like the premise. But I really liked the idea that it was stating that it was like, the system is inherently broken and is weighted against victims to be able to get help. So it is up to us as people who benefit from this system to work against it for the people who are penalized by it. And that was a very timely message for Korean society at the moment, due to, you know, we're not gonna go into actual cases, but I really liked that it was a very sort of like, obviously this was made months before any of the current news things happening came out, but I like seeing popular culture acknowledging a issue that the government seems hell-bent on not acknowledging. And that's sort of the purpose of art, right? Like, I'm not saying that Officer Black Belt is like a high art film. Like, it's not. Well,
but it reminds me of Taxi Driver, because Taxi Driver would have, at least definitely first season, had a lot of kind of same thought of like people not within a cop system trying to fix where the system essentially failed to take bad guys down that continue to harm people. But that it would be based on actual cases that occurred. Yeah. And so the show would have levity, all this stuff, but it would be very much, oh no, we're making an obvious statement. And then even at the end, call these hotlines for bullying, call this hotline for suicide. Like they had actively like a thing that they were trying to say. Yeah. Like,
whereas this one has like less of a statement in like a very specific statement. It's just saying like, hey, it might not be up to the victims to solve the issue that's happening. And sort of at the moment, and this is not just a Korea problem, okay? This is a worldwide problem, especially in sort of sexual violence type situation, that it is often the only person who ever is punished for it are the victims of sexual crimes. And I really liked the concept that was sort of coming out where there was never any like talk of like victims deserving it. No one ever mentioned that. Not even the bad guys, like, you know, and there was never any mention of like, you know, any of the stupid bullshit that you always see around sexual crime. Like, this guy was very straightforward. She said no. She's a child. You are the problem. I'm the solution. And it was, like, it was refreshing in that way. Like,
I will say, like, as far as, to me, a similar vibe is Midnight Runners.
Yes. Yes.
So you get buddy cop, and it got pretty goofy.
Yeah.
In moments, because, like, it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
But it's not, to me, it's not quite as, the goofy parts of Midnight Runners were a little goofier than what we dealt with here.
Yeah.
But it is very similar with the depth of the darkness that they're dealing with and going up against.
Is wild.
To me, it felt very similar. Like,
yeah.
Because Midnight Runners, since it was so goofy near the beginning, because like
that you
pulling funny faces level of goofy sometimes.
Yeah. Like, for a slight Midnight Runners spoiler, you would not expect that it's about human trafficking. For the first 40 minutes of the movie,
yeah,
you do not know that it's actually about a human trafficking ring.
And then, like, suddenly you're seeing these goofy characters, like, oh shit, like, they lock in. They
are the definition of locked in for this stage. And like Midnight Runners, I think is actually a really good, like, movie equivalent. Like, if you liked Midnight Runners, you'll probably really like this. The violence that happens, and I said this, like, we were talking about this last week with the drama exchange and Week Hero Class 1, is that the violence that occurs doesn't get brushed off. Like, it is, the violence that happens isn't like superhero violence. Like, this Kim Woo-bin's character is not, he's a very talented martial artist. He's not immortal. Like, he doesn't brush off. Like, he gets wounded. He gets fucked up.
And it's not like he takes one hit to the face and he's down. You see him get clocked a lot.
And stagger. And
hurts. Like,
yeah. Like, the fight choreography of this film is absolutely incredible. But yeah.
I just suddenly had remembered the Midnight Runners thing, just as far as the depth of showing, and I felt like Midnight Runners was trying to bring that to light. So, like, you got goofy buddy cop, but then it was like, hey, this thing happens, and that's a problem.
Sky, I might have just solved why it feels so much like Midnight Runners. It's the same screenwriter director as Midnight Runners.
There we go.
Who also did one of my favorite Korean action movies, The Divine Fury, which is one of my...
I haven't seen that one.
Oh, ooh, Sky. Ooh, Divine Fury. Big fan of the... It's a silly movie. Like, it's not about this at all. It's literally like an it's like a demon movie. It's like a priest punching people movie. He also wrote and directed Bloodhounds, which so apparently he really enjoys
fighting
action. But then he also wrote and directed that movie about the two of them saving all those dogs. My Heart Puppy.
I don't
go around anyway, came out last year. So he apparently enjoys a good, his name is Jason Kim, and apparently he went to Georgetown. That's cool. But apparently really loves making dark action movies. And you know what? Doing a good job. So
yeah, makes sense why Midnight Runners.
Yeah, we're just like, wow, like, yeah, this does remind me of Midnight Runners.
Yeah. I will say, I do think the tone is a little different. I do think that Officer Black Belt is not quite as goofy.
Yeah, and also it doesn't...
Like Midnight Runners was, like, a little goofier.
Yeah, like, I feel like this doesn't have quite as much of a quick tonal shift as Midnight Runners does. Because Midnight Runners really lulls you into a false sense of security before immediately going wild, okay? Like, just wildly dark. Whereas this one, like, you already start out where he's dealing with
right out of the gate, it's
criminals.
It's like, oh, this one's a sex offender against children, and immediately the character's like, whoa, like
that's fucked up.
And that's early on, so it's not like
and immediately he's like struck with like, well, why is this person even being let back in society? Like, this is, like, like, and so I really sort of like this sort of like dumb guy finding out society is horribly broken and tries to do his best to help fix it. As like, that was also kind of the plot of Midnight Runners.
Yeah.
Except instead of probation officers, they were cops in training.
But I will say, I feel like Midnight Runners, the two lead characters, Midnight Runners, are shown as absolute idiots. Like, they are... Yeah.
But, like, idiots in two completely different ways.
Yes,
like,
but they're still, like...
Yeah, whoa. Where it's like, one is book smart, street idiot, and one is street smart, book idiot. And those like, combined, they make one smart person.
One person. Maybe, on a good day.
Whereas, like, it's so funny because, like, Kim Woo-bin's character in this, he's never shown as being stupid.
Right, like,
he's just shown as being uninformed. Just, like, uninterested in things that weren't fun to him. Which is different...
never felt like even the friend group, it wasn't because they failed at life or something. It really was this is just what we want to do.
Yeah,
and that's...
Like, it was very clear to me that they didn't say it, but he's just unmedicated ADHD. That was just like, oh, he's got ADHD. Okay, cool. I see what we're doing here. I see how we're presenting this in a way that makes sense, and that this character... But it was such a good characterization, and he did such a good job, like, in the role, that it really, like, elevated it, like, up from being just like a, run-of-the-mill punch him up. You know what I mean? Like, it had, like, a really...
You cared about his character pretty quick. He was very endearing, but it never felt like they're trying to make him endearing. He just was. Like, it was subtle. Like, I think this movie is a little more subtle than Midnight Runners. Like, that's what I want to say.
Yeah, it's a lot more...
It's
more subtle, yeah. Yeah, it's...
And I liked Midnight Runners, for the record, but I also really
liked Midnight Runners.
But
it's a good...
Even after you watch Midnight Runners, you're a little bit like, whew! Like, the total shift was pretty extreme.
Yeah. And I just looked, I gave Midnight Runners a 9.5 out of 10, so I clearly liked Midnight Runners. Yeah, it's just like a really solid show, and I had originally given it an 8 out of 10, but I'm moving that up to a 9 out of 10, friends. The more I talk about it, the more I realize I genuinely really liked this movie. Now, I will say... Oh, go on.
Well, I was going to say, I would recommend this movie to a lot of people, but I actually think there are a lot of people that this movie is not for, just because of the subject matter. So, first of all, a lot of people aren't going to be into that level of violence. Like, that is straight out of the gate. There's that. But then just the like, it is dark, realistic stuff. So it's not going to be for everybody. And definitely when we're talking about, say, the typical person that's already into a lot of, let's say, Asian dramas or whatever, even a variety of genres, it's still not going to be for everybody. Just because it's heavy stuff. And if it's someone that kind of avoids the heavy, do not pass go. Like, do not... But if it's somebody that is okay with the heavy stuff, I would highly, highly recommend it. But, like, I think the main thing is, can you knock the really difficult subject matter?
Okay, if you can handle the things that we've already warned you about, like, I think a lot of people would really enjoy it. It's like, I don't think, like, someone like my mother, for example, would enjoy this. Because she's very, she has a very hard time with child endangerment. Like, she can't do that. But, like, I feel like someone like my husband would really enjoy this.
Right. I think my husband would really enjoy it. But I was also explaining to him, because I had shown him the trailer.
Misleading. A little bit of a bait and switch. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was trying to explain to him earlier, I'm like, it actually ended up being way darker than I thought. Because I thought we were going to deal with some bad guys, but we really dealt with some bad dudes.
Bad guys.
Doing bad things. So...
And not cartoonish. Like, they weren't cartoonishly evil at all. Like, they were very believable pieces of shit. You know what I mean?
Also,
like,
I guess it doesn't really matter. But one thing I want to bring up about the bad guy, like as far as the actor that they chose to play this character, they chose a tall, really built dude, and they had established that Kim Woo Bin's character was a very tall, well-built because guy. Of all his martial arts stuff. So all of a sudden, you're pulling up on this character for the first time, and you see him. They purposely are like, he stood up, and you're like,
he's massive.
So the fights with this really bad character are not, oh, let's take him down easily. Oh, no. Like, he is a tank. So that's actually an aspect of the violence being a lot, because in order to take this person down, you have to, like, that's how he got away, because he's a tank. Like, yeah. Anyway, that is the thing.
I always feel really bad for actors who have to play just these reprehensible, like, disgusting people. That must be so that must be difficult. And it's not the sort of thing that an actual reprehensible, disgusting person could play, because they don't see themselves as reprehensible and disgusting, right? So it's just sort of like, wow, you people are, like, damn, like, he did a really good job, but I feel really bad that he had to do it. You know what I mean?
Right. Like,
yeah. I will say, there is literally 2 women in this whole movie. But true. I think that is on purpose. And this is my theory, okay? This is just a theory. But my theory is that the writer, who's also the director, Jason Kim, I think he, maybe not even consciously, but was putting forth an idea that the problems being dealt with in this movie are primarily problems caused primarily by men. And so they should be solved primarily by men. And I actually, that's, because normally if there's, like, no women in a movie, I'm always just like, come on, guys. Like, if this isn't a BL, what are we doing? You know? Like, put some women in here. Like, but in this one, it was like, no, it actually made sense that all of these characters are men. Because that's who should actually be addressing the problems caused by men. Well, so they're men.
You know, if these women and children are being brutalized by men, who should kind of sacrifice their bodies on some level in order to protect innocent people?
The victims.
That are being brutal. The victims. Who should sacrifice themselves? Other dudes. Like, who should
dudes
protect?
Who realize the problem? Yeah. And I know that we go on a little bit of feminist rants here all the time. We have a good time. We love a good feminist rant over here at the Nunas. I think people.
We have many soapboxes. That's one of the main ones. Yeah,
but it's like it's refreshing to see a show that doesn't victim blame once and really puts the ball in the court of the people whose court it should be in. Because, like,
no, it never explicitly says that. Like, it never says,
but, like, through its actions, it really does. Yeah. It doesn't do exposition. This movie really figured out show, don't tell. Just show. We're giving you all the information you need visually and by the characters just being the characters that you need to understand the point, you know? And that's the kind of how filmmaking's supposed to work. It's like the point of a visual medium. And so this was a very successful movie in terms of putting forth an objective of making a movie that is fun to watch, but also sheds light on an actual problem. And it did it very well without ever going too far to make it uncomfortable to it didn't get exploitative at any point.
I never felt like that about it.
Because, like, every once in a while you'll be watching a movie and you're like, it seems like the filmmakers are taking a little bit too much lingering film on someone being brutalized. Like, no, that wasn't the case here. Like, it was just like, no, it showed you enough that you got the point, and then moved on to like being like, actually the people who should be getting beaten up are the perpetrators, not, you know, this hairdresser or this 10-year-old child, you know? So it was a very successful movie, and I genuinely really enjoyed it. And
yeah, I really do recommend it. For the folks that would appreciate a movie, you know, the content of that, I think that it would be a really good one to check out, because great like all the acting was great, like not a false step amongst it. Like it was, I thought it really was endearing. Like Kim Woo-bin's character is very, when I say he's cute, he didn't do cutesy actions. It was just, he was endearing. He wasn't like super naive or anything, like really, it was not overdone. It was just simply, he kind of just had a little hole in his life, and then all of his little stuff kind of came together to be like, I can maybe help people a little bit. And even at the beginning, he didn't automatically be like, yeah, I want to help people. It was more like, oh, is it good to help people? Like he genuinely asked that question. And the supervisor guy was like, yeah, it's cool to help people, blah, 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 blah. And again, he didn't look down on him for asking that question.
Yeah.
He kind of explained a little bit. And then you see Kim Woo-bin's character, like, figure out it is cool to help people. I'm having a really good time.
Yeah, not only is it cool, it's fun. Like, and then, you know, growing as a person, even if he did have to write the rights on his arm to remember them. Like,
cute.
It was like his character, like from beginning to end, they did not falter on this characterization once. It was,
and I just appreciate that there was, aside from the fact that there were a bazillion dudes, it was never, let's talk about women weird, or there really wasn't a bit of misogyny happening.
The funny part was, it was just like these four dudes, like, it was almost like they didn't really have interest in women whatsoever. Like, they just had interest in, like, their brotherly fraternity that they had together. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Maybe they had
with their little funny little code name nicknames, like their little screen names or whatever.
Yeah, like it just, you know, they were like, listen, we have other things going on, you know? Like, women are fine. We don't wish them ill. Just like, we got other things. We're dealing with ourselves and not making it women's problem right now, you know? Which, thumbs up.
We appreciate
that, because let's be honest, like, why y'all making men's problems women's problem? Solve it yourself, friends. Like, I thought that you ran the world or whatever and were so much better than us. Maybe be friends with each other. But yeah, it's a good movie. And
what would be so fun, I think, though, would be like a follow-up, all women, like doing something real cool. Like, a friend group of women. Like, that would be so cool.
You know what? I like
hacker women or something. Like, that would just be like,
I like where your head's at. I actually do hope they make a sequel to this movie, because I feel like there's more fun that could be had. I feel like we could have more fun with this character.
Like, if he became a trainer just to go, like, train people how to, like, protect themselves or something. And, like, I don't know. There could be really cool women characters out there.
Yeah. Anyway, you know what? I thought it was great. I upped my rating after chatting this whole time from an 8 to a 9. The more I talked about it, the more I realized I genuinely liked it. So
I cried twice. I'm not going to say I never cry. I really don't cry that often at stuff. Mm-hmm. It got me twice. So
I have cried at I've cried at 2 filmed things ever. One of them makes sense, and one of them is very stupid. The one that makes sense is Move to Heaven, the saddest show ever made. Move to Heaven. And the other one was that the opening sequence of the 2009 Star Trek reboot. I don't know what it is about that opening sequence to that movie, but it gets me. It gets me every time. It gets me every time. Like,
You know, whatever gets you.
Chris Hemsworth, what are you doing here? Ariana, why are you here? No, it gets me every, like, I don't know why. Those are the two things. Like, I don't cry. Like, I'm not an overly emotional person.
But I'm really not, like, I'm not saying I don't cry. I'm just saying I don't often, but like really. And what I wish to say about the times that it did make me cry, it was not like overwrought exploitive moments of like sadness or something. It was just very touching. Sad. And it usually centered around the girl that was, you know, finally able to get out of her house and stuff. Like, it was very touching.
Also, I gotta say, using a chihuahua for evil, no, those
Maybe they'll take it down a notch again for you. Put your rating back down.
No, like the Chihuahua would get me too, an abandoned Chihuahua. That's how they.
Oh yeah.
For anyone who's not going to watch the movie because they're like they can't. That's how they lure the child essentially, is they tie up a little Chihuahua outside and she goes to pet it and then they snatch her. Very cute Chihuahua.
FYI for you, those Chihuahua owners, like that's we are.
We're Chihuahua. We're Chihuahua people.
So, I'm sure. But when you were watching it too, it was like, oh no! Like the moment, oh no!
As soon as I saw the Chihuahua, I was like, no, you're not using a Chihuahua for ill. Don't do it. The Chihuahua doesn't deserve to be part of your crimes.
Yeah.
But it's a solid movie, and I think a lot of people should give it a chance. And it's on Netflix, so it is easy to watch.
Also, it clicked along. Like, there wasn't really downtime. It just kind of kept going pretty fast.
Yeah, it was good. It was a solid, good film that I think a lot of people enjoy. And that's that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, thank you for hanging out with us. We'll be back next week with another episode. Actually, it'll be our What We're Watching in September episode. Everyone loves those. So we'll let you know all that we watched last month. But if you want to, if you just can't wait till then and you want to just listen to more, we're wherever podcasts can be found. But you can also watch us on YouTube if you like video and you want to see our beautiful faces. Hee hee. As we always joke, all 15 of you on YouTube, people listen to us in audio. It's, the video is a new thing. Anyway, but you can also go to our website, certifiednewness.com, where every single episode you can listen to, and it also has time codes and links. So if you want to know where to find something, generally you can just click its name and it'll bring you where you need to go. If you want to support this podcast, you go to patreon.com/certifiednewness, join Certified Found Family. They're our found family on the web, and we think they're fantastic. We love them. And that's pretty much it. We hope you have a great week. Take care of yourself. Have a good one. Wear a mask, wash your hands, and keep enjoying Asian entertainment. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.